Joining us today on Mix in the Water Monday is former South Carolina offensive lineman John Strickland. And Strick, we were talking about before we hopped on, there's no moral victories when it comes to college football, especially in the SEC. However, 3 games in, especially after what we saw with week 1, you were telling me you've been very pleased with the progress from this offensive line.
Yeah, I think anybody who's watched us from the UNC game to how they played pass pro wise is night and day from week 1 to week 3. And Coach Beamer was right. Take your shots now uh, by how the pass pro went against UNC versus where it's at currently as of this past weekend.
Yeah, you mentioned the pass pro, and that's not to excuse some of the run block, and we'll get into everything here. But when you mention the pass pro, what is it in particular, right? Because you say that some people on the outside, whether they've never played that position or they're just wondering, what does Strick mean by that? Can you kind of break that down to us in simple terms?
Well, basically, your pass pro obviously means pass protection. I think we've done a better job. If you watch week 1, we had missed assignments. We had guys not passing off twist on the inside, and Georgia likes to do a lot of twisting. If you really watch the line play on both sides of the ball, Georgia likes to do a lot of twisting stunts a good bit of the game. And I thought for the most part, the guys did a much better job than what they did versus UNC. I just think, the tackles were able to stay on the island and hold the DNs and give Spence more time to, to pass the ball instead of running for his life 24/7. Obviously, we all know Georgia's got a fantastic defensive line, so you can't expect to hold them off every single play because there were several times where Spence was getting hit as he's throwing the ball, which caused him to not be able to get as good a ball out to the receivers as you had hoped.
Looking at the snap counts right now for the offensive lineman, Nick Gargiulo played the most snaps, along with true freshman Tree Babalade. Now, both those guys, it was their first time playing on the road against an SEC opponent. And even though it was new for Gargiulo, no disrespect to him, it just speaks volumes about what the true freshman was able to do. Big Tree being able to get out there. You've said you've been impressed with this young man, but especially being able to go into a stadium, which I know as a Georgia boy, you grew up going into that stadium. I know you were at the game this past weekend. What is your just overall thoughts about what that young man has been able to do, and especially this past weekend?
Well, I was really impressed with Big Tree. I'll tell you what, I mean, being a true freshman, going into that environment, playing against arguably the best defense in the country, man, I thought he did a fantastic job. He held his own, and that's a lot to ask for a true freshman. I mean, because I remember when I was a redshirt freshman and having to go in and play the whole game against Clemson back in 2001. I mean, I was nervous as all get out. But the good thing is, you go out there, you hit the guy across from you a couple of times, and you realize, hey, I'm just as good as these guys. And then all the wide-eyed stuff kind of wears off. But man, I think what you really worry about from a true freshman is missed assignments, brain lapse of, okay, what am I supposed to do on this play? I mean, that's what you kind of worry about because they're brand new to the system and to this type of college football. I mean, the SEC is night and day versus high school. But I thought Tree did a fantastic job as a true freshman. Uh, Kind of reminds me a little bit of Travell Wharton starting his freshman year, coming in and playing left tackle. And Travell started all 4 years and was a great player. So who knows? We may have another one of those on the left side of the line there.
Well, on the right side of the line, Trevon Baugh, the other true freshman, he only had 12 snaps. After the game, Shane Beamer said that he probably should have played him a little bit more. Not specifically just talking about Trevon, but just young offensive linemen in general, Strick. And you kind of hit on it a little bit with Tree. What are some of the challenges they face, and why is it sometimes so difficult for them to see the field as quickly as, as some would like them to see? And what does it say about what those two guys have been able to do to get there and being able to get out to the field. Obviously, we know that they're trying to work through some growing pains up front, but just the dynamic of being an offensive lineman in comparison to, no disrespect, I was a defensive back, but maybe a defensive back who might see the field as a freshman.
Yeah, defensive back, it's a little easier to transition into because your athleticism and speed is just something, you just have it. Okay. You just have it. Well, when it comes to line play, I'd say the two hardest positions to come in and play as a true freshman is offensive line and quarterback, just because there's so much to learn. And especially at offensive line, a guy coming out of high school going against a 20, 21, 22-year-old guy who's been around for a while and in the system and it's been working out and it's gotten stronger and all this versus a guy fresh out of high school. There's a big difference. I mean, there's not many guys that can come in to this league and contribute on the line of scrimmage, especially at offensive line, as a true freshman. I mean, it's just super tough to do. I mean, you're going against grown men who have been around in this league for a while. And that's what I was very impressed with from some of these true freshmen.
Looking at the statistics, South Carolina ranks 8th in the country when it comes to passing offense. I believe they're 130 in the country in rush offense. As an offensive lineman, obviously, you can't control what's going on in the backfield as far as, okay, who's getting the ball and all that kind of stuff. But what do you think this offensive line? I know it starts with the play calling a little bit too. I think Dowell Loggains has done a nice job, especially after where this offense was a year ago outside of the Tennessee and Clemson games. But what can the offensive line do a little bit better to help that run game, which South Carolina desperately needs to get going this weekend against Mississippi State?
Yeah, so pass pros improved. The run game has not. Run game, I mean, really, it's a dog mentality, is what it is. I mean, you just got to have that dog in you. You got to be nasty and just want it. And that's what the run game comes down to, especially as offensive linemen. And obviously, not missing assignments. But that's what it comes down to. And listen, those guys are working hard to get this thing better. And but the run game has got to improve because I think we were way too one-sided in the second half versus Georgia. We could get no run game going. And when you have to just sit back and pass on every play, the defense it's going to advantage the defense, especially a defense like Georgia. So you really got to improve on the run game, and we need to come out and try and run the ball. And hopefully these guys improve this week, and we get a little better, maybe a little better run game play calls instead of too many up the middle. It seems like we do a lot. Maybe try and get some outside stuff going. And I will tell you, we didn't see much of Mario Anderson, but
Yeah.
I thought when he was in there, I thought he really ran the ball well. I mean, he's low, powerful, thick guy. So I'd like to see him get in a little bit more too. And,
Yeah,
yeah, go ahead.
well, you go, Strick.
No, that's it. That's what I was going to say.
Well, I was going to say 2 carries for 9 yards, and one of those carries, I think it was 3rd and 1, 7 yards, which led to the eventual Juice touchdown reception. But former Gamecock running back Mike Davis actually took to Twitter, or X, whatever you want to call it now, and he actually pointed that out. He's like, he likes the way that 24 runs the ball, and
he looks like
hopes
Mike
we
a
can get
little
the ball
bit.
more.
He looks like Mike a little bit. I mean, he's a little bit shorter than Mike, but Mike was that shorter, stockier guy that would just pound you, bruiser of a runner. And that's kind of what Mario reminds me of. I know he doesn't have the speed that Mike does, but I'd like to see him play a little bit more.
We'll hit on defense in a little bit, but a lot of, obviously, with your background of playing the offensive line, there's a lot of things that I think are important to bring up. One thing that I talked about a lot heading into this past weekend's game against Georgia, just because of last year with what Will Muschamp and Kirby Smart did from a defensive standpoint, but after seeing some of the success that Georgia had, you mentioned some of the twists and stunts that Georgia was able to do coming off the edge with some of their defensive tackles when they were doing those twists. But the other thing that they were doing a lot, and I think it's something that South Carolina could continue to see as the season goes on, because it's a copycat league. There was a lot of shifting mid-cadence. And I felt like it really gave South Carolina a lot of headaches. Now, obviously, last year, zone blocking schemes, and USC really struggled with that for the majority of the season, the majority of the 2 years under offensive coordinator Marcus Satterfield. They were shifting outwards, they were shifting in, they were shifting left, they were shifting right. If this is something that USC continues to see, whether it be this weekend against Mississippi State or as the season goes on, as an offensive line, I'm sure communication plays a big part of it, but what else goes into that to make sure that you can make, the proper calls so that you give your quarterback the right protection up front?
Well, and that's what killed us a lot in the second half. I think we had what, 5 or 6 false starts in the
I mean,
second
that
half, if
was
I'm
it
not
too. It
mistaken.
also led to false starts. Yep.
That I think that was the main problem. And when you start getting backed up in 1st and 15 or 2nd and 20 and all this stuff, I think that's what I mean. Coach Beamer even touched on it. I mean, we shot ourselves in the foot there in the second half. Uh, I mean, as an offensive lineman, when you're seeing these shifts, I mean, what the snap count is. Obviously, I know when you're on the road, most of the time you're doing a solid snap count. You're just the center's watching the quarterback's foot, is what happens most of the time. I know I've been in some loud places. I mean, I remember being in Neyland in '03 when we were in overtime. I mean, you couldn't hear anything. So basically, I'm just all the guys got to watch the ball just like the defensive lineman does. So I think that's the key. And after they were shifting the whole game, so there's really no excuse, especially in the second half when you've seen it all in the first half, to be jumping off sides. Now I know it's difficult with crowd noise and everything, but just shot ourselves in the foot on that. But so I don't know if that totally answers your question, but
Yeah, I mean, I think it plays a big role with it. No, there's no question about it. And look, they got Tennessee coming up. They have Texas A&M.
yeah,
Obviously, Mississippi State's this weekend, but they're going to be playing in some loud environments. And give Georgia credit; they made it loud. They made it
yeah,
loud out there. I know Kirby,
yeah.
you
Well,
know,
Neyland's going to be
pulled.
louder in 2 weeks. I can
Yeah,
tell
he
you
probably
that.
pulled a back muscle reaching, trying to milk the comment from Tonka Hemingway to when you're the two-time defending national champ, you're trying to find anything. Nearly
Yeah,
30-point favorites against South
yeah.
Carolina last weekend. But flipping it to the other side, I'm just talking from a mirror standpoint, because again, as a former offensive lineman, you understand sometimes when things are working and what things aren't working from a defensive line standpoint. It just doesn't seem like that front, and obviously it starts with the D line, that they're causing much pressure. And that was probably one of the main reasons why they weren't able to force a turnover this past weekend. I bring that up, though, Strick, because what do you think this D line can do to be able to give themselves a chance to not only cause more pressure, but to play a more physical style of football, which they desperately need to do? Again, against Mississippi State, who likes to throw the football, you need to be able to disrupt the QB this weekend.
Yeah, I mean, I think from what we saw this week, the D line did look better than what they looked week one. I mean, they put some pressure on Beck. I mean, it
Starting with
wasn't a
TJ
ton.
Sanders. I want to throw that out there too,
Oh
because
yeah,
Sanders
T
played out of his mind.
TJ was in beast mode the first half, man. I was so happy for him. I mean, I had just all of us watching the game. We were like, all right, TJ. Like TJ was getting after him. I think the biggest issue we have is we just don't have the depth right now in defense, and I think it kind of showed in the second half. And I even think I heard Coach Beamer say something about it too, that the depth is thin right now. There's injuries. Um, so that became a problem in the second half, and Georgia just has a big offensive line, man, and they were just kind of able to lean on us that second half, and I think we kind of wore down a little bit there in the second half. But uh, the defensive line from week one to now has
Mhm.
improved quite a bit, just like the offensive line. The offensive line just got to get better in the run game, and I think the D line's got to do the same thing. But I do like the improvement you are seeing. I think we've seen improvement every week so far, and that's what you want to see.
Yeah, and I think the other thing too, unfortunately, mentioned some of the depth issues they have at linebacker. You only played 3 linebackers this past weekend. I mean, that's the challenging part. Debo Williams played the entire game. Stone Bland, and God bless him. Yes, it was probably one of the, tougher performances he's had during his young career, but he's also, looked pretty good in some of these other
He's a
games.
young guy, man. He's
Yeah,
a young guy.
exactly.
He's going to continue to get better.
And he's also been someone that's had to probably play a little bit more than what he should be playing just based on some of the lack of depth that they have. Pup Howard seeing a good bit. I say that because, I think Pup Howard's the first name that just comes to mind. How important is it going to be for South Carolina to develop some of this depth, especially at the linebacker position? But I'm sure you would agree that it's not just there. It's probably across the board at multiple positions.
Yeah, I'll tell you, Pup, if you maybe not everybody has, but if you see the guy in person, you're like, this guy's a dude, okay?
He's got the size already as a freshman. There's no question about that.
Yeah, I mean, he looks like he's 26 years old playing middle linebacker in the NFL, but he's got to keep developing, getting better, learning the system, which I think, obviously all this just comes with time, okay? But the linebacker, we're just so thin, and it goes back to my point of the depth and how Georgia was just able to run the ball the whole second half. Just our guys just wear down because we just do not have the depth right now from the injuries, and I think that's caused a big problem. You could say the same basically just about at all positions on the defense except for D tackle. I think those guys, we've mostly healthy, but Teak Johnson, he was out this past week. So hopefully you can get him back this week to add some more depth there. But I think some of these young guys, man, they're just going to have to drop you nuts, start picking it up and let's go. They got to start coming along. And I mean, the coaches are coaching them up the best they can, but you can only play the guys that you feel the most confident in, even if they have to go out and play 80 plays. I mean, it is what it is, but that does cause issues when it gets to late in the second half. Because listen, man, you play that many plays on defense is really tough because you're running all over the field, chasing ball carriers, receivers, quarterbacks. You put out a lot more effort than, say like an offensive lineman do. They're always in the box. D tackles and D ends, man, they're running all over the field chasing down balls. And, I mean, it takes a toll on your stamina towards the end of the game.
Strick, last one for you. I know he came in a little bit after you, but this will be a special weekend for Alshon Jeffrey getting his jersey retired. And we've seen South Carolina start to do that more over the last couple of years, not just with football, but with other sports as well. Even for a player that you didn't have the opportunity to play with, but because he was after you, I'm sure you paid a lot of attention to what he was able to do, especially in that Alabama game. What does it mean when you do see a fellow Gamecock be able to get his jersey retired and be able to receive an honor like he will receive this weekend?
I think it's fantastic, man. I think if you go back and look at everything that Alshon has done for this program, he deserves every bit of it. In my opinion, I think him and Sterling are still probably the two best receivers to ever play here at South Carolina. I would throw my old teammate Sidney Rice in there too, but Sidney he didn't play as many years as these other guys. And for Alshon to do everything he did, I mean, Alshon had some amazing games and won us some amazing games on his shoulders because of how he played. So it's exciting to see that, and super happy for him.
Yeah, it'll be an awesome opportunity to be able to see so many Gamecock fans be able to thank him as well. I think that's one of the neater things. Not the exact same, but think of Tom Brady coming back a couple of weeks ago with the Patriots. The fans are able to thank him. That will be certainly the case this weekend when Alshon is back in the building. Strix coming at you live from Bourbon Street, as you can see that sign behind. That's a nice little collection there, bud.
Yeah, we got a few bottles. We have fun collecting bourbon. Like to share it with friends when people come over. So, fun little hobby. Expensive hobby, but fun.
Well, this is Mixing a Water Monday, not Mixing a Bourbon Monday, even though maybe some felt that way after this past weekend, but not as bad. Not as bad in comparison to where the Gamecocks
Well,
were
a loss is a
through three
loss,
games.
Mike.
Oh, I
A
know,
loss.
I know. A loss is a loss. There's no moral victories. They are making progress, but it's the SEC. It's not.
We got to get the run game going, man. We got to get the run game going because one, it helps open up the pass game more instead of putting it on Spencer's
Yep.
shoulders, and two, it keeps the defense off the field when you run the ball. Okay, so it makes the defense play lesser plays because it means their offense is going to get less plays when you're running the ball and eating clock. So I think that's one thing I'm really looking forward to this week's game versus Mississippi State is where this run game's at, because I think we have a chance to have a really good rest of the season. We got to figure out how to get a run game going.
I'm glad you brought that up because I kind of had a little back and forth, respectfully disagreed with my colleague Colin Taylor about time of possession. Sometimes it is important because if you're not able to stay on the field, your defense is going to be gassed. And as we mentioned before, with how thin they are at some positions, and Debo Williams having to play every snap, and Stone Bland a couple weeks ago having to play every snap, you need to improve that time of possession. And how do you do that? You run the football. You have success.
Yep. It's as simple as that. You run the ball, you keep your offense on the field, you keep their offense off the field, and guess what? Come the fourth quarter, your defense is way more fresh. They feel much better. I promise you. That's how it goes.
John Strickland, former Gamecock offensive lineman, joining us today on Mix in a Water Monday. Appreciate you, Strick.
Yeah, appreciate it, Mike. Always love talking with you on here.